All right, Nick, let's talk about the Alabama Crimson Tide as they get ready for the ReliaQuest Bowl. There's some young players that have come and started to practice with Alabama. Some of this 2025 class has hit the field, and to be honest, they have been very impressive to not only the Alabama staff, but to some players as well. I think this is a really good sign for the Crimson Tide. But before we get into all of that, I'm Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, as I alluded to, Alabama has some young guys from the 2025 class showing up for their first looks on the field. They've been very, very impressive. Let's get into the article and we can talk more about it on the other side. This is from AL.com. It says Alabama football's ReliaQuest Bowl practice represents a valuable opportunity for some of the youngest members of the Crimson Tide. Members of Alabama's 2025 recruiting class who opted to enroll early were allowed to join the team for practice. Four of them were defensive players, and all of those were spotted on the field at Berkeley Prep in Tampa on Saturday. Because after practice ended, linebacker Jihad Campbell praised how the young players have responded so far. They're absorbing a lot of great information, Campbell said. Obviously, they don't know everything, but they're doing a pretty good job just learning the playbook and understanding different things that we do out there in our individual drills. They're going to be great guys for our program. Subsequently, Alabama Crimson Tide quarterback Jalen Milroe also said the youngsters have been a positive presence in Tampa so far. I think this is a really good sign for the Crimson Tide to have these guys not only want to early enroll, get their early start practicing, but the fact that they're there and they're looking really good, already starting to understand and absorb a lot of information. Really great news for the Crimson Tide. I'm curious what your thoughts are on this one, Nick. But before we get to you, Alabama fans, in the comment section below, big bowl game against Michigan. I think it's going to be a really, really interesting one. I think you'll probably be able to come out on top, but let me know what your thoughts are. What do you think the final score of this game is going to be? Let us know in the comment section below your thoughts on the final score of the ReliaQuest Bowl. But nonetheless, Nick, what do you think about these youngsters for Alabama already showing off in practice?
It's a good start, right? And it's an important start because if we look at Kalen DeBoer and the questions of how he will handle the transition from Saban to his era and how will this Crimson Tide program be, like will they continue to be a national title contender, or will they end up being, sort of a top 25, top 15 kind of team, which honestly is where they are right now. Three losses, including, boy, that Oklahoma loss looks worse and worse and worse the way this is dragged on, especially the way Oklahoma lost to Navy. I mean, that kind of stuff isn't excusable. Now, the reality is it is a transition era, right? I mean, we saw this with Saban. Saban's first year was very, very ugly. Things got better their second year, of course, but then they got smacked by Utah. I think they were upset like by 20 points or something. And that, I think it was the Sugar Bowl. And it was just people were like, is Saban really the guy? We don't know. We'll have to wait and see. And then, of course, history played out. And Saban obviously is one of the great coaches in college football history. And so we'll have to see how Kalen DeBoer takes year two and how he takes these young guys and develops them, because that's going to be key. We live in an era of the NIL, the transfer portal, right? We all understand that. But I still believe that the lifeblood of every program is recruiting and developing young talent. You're going to lose a lot of guys to the transfer portal every year. It's going to happen, but you're not going to lose everybody, right? You're going to keep a lot of guys on your team. You're going to have to bring in guys to replace those guys that are lost. It's going to be a lot about developing. It's all about going to be about recruiting prowess. It's going to transition more like to the NFL game, where you draft a guy, he becomes a really good player. You have to decide whether to pay him or not. If you don't pay him, he leaves in free agency, and then you got to draft a guy to replace him and develop him, and that cycle just continues on and on and on and on. That's where college football is going to become, certainly major college football in the SEC. So it's on DeBoer to handle that with how he does in the recruiting game, losing any guys through the transfer portal, which Alabama, some wins in the transfer portal, some losses this year as well. They're trying to offset the losses with gains in the recruiting department. And again, these guys are off to a great start. Look, they're doing scout team stuff. They're doing individual drills, just working with the players, learning concepts, things like that. That's outstanding. Great start so far. Love to see it, especially these young kids. I mean, instead of going to their senior prom or things like that, they're already focused on Alabama football. Credit to them. I was nowhere near that maturity level at their age. but it's going to be really important for Kalen DeBoer to win these recruiting classes and to develop. The rankings, of course, matter. You want the 5 stars, but you got to make sure 5 stars actually pan out to play like 5 stars when they're playing for the Tide. Same thing, you want 4 stars to play like 5 stars. You want 3 stars to play like 4 and 5 stars, right? You got to develop, you got to recruit, you got to make sure you bring in the right guys. This is a great start. We're going to have to see a lot more of this going forward. This is critical for Kalen DeBoer. I love the fact that the veterans on this team, some of the leaders are excited with the young guys. If you get buy-in as a freshman from the leaders on the team, that's usually a positive indicator. Good start so far for Alabama. We'll see how it goes the rest of the year, but I think this is a positive sign that Kalen DeBoer can offset some of the losses in the transfer portal through wins in the recruiting game.
Yeah, Nick, and I think one important thing to notice here is how usually teams develop throughout the season. Usually, traditionally, a team will start off slow. They'll gain momentum throughout the season. They'll look better and better until the final of the year is usually the best version of that team that you're going to see. But for Alabama's case, if you look at the grades, if you look at the rankings for this team, they started off really hot with grades, and especially on the defensive side of the ball, in the 90s and the 80s really early on. But those are against the weak teams, the Western Kentuckys, the USFs, the Wisconsins. And those rankings continue to drop and drop. And you look at the last game of the season, a 69 grade versus Auburn, although that's not horrible grade for Alabama standards for what we expect from Alabama. We expect elite defenses. They really dropped. They dropped about 30 points, or excuse me, 21 points throughout the season, which is a pretty significant drop off. And those last couple of games are in the mid 70s to high 60s. Not what you're looking for an Alabama team. So I'm glad they're able to bring these young guys in, especially 4 guys on the defensive side of the ball, and they're really getting an early start. I like they're coming in early, practicing, looking really good, trying to absorb the information, because what we need next year from this Alabama team is for them to get these guys prepared early on, because there's going to be a good amount of turnover, especially on key positions on both sides of the football. To get off to a hot start again, I think they're going to have to do a lot of early work, and we're seeing that already. DeBoer encouraging these guys to be able to come in early enrollment, get practices underway. I think this is a good sign for Alabama, as you said. It looks like the team is moving in the right direction. And I'm hoping by this time next year, we're talking about a much different Alabama team who not only started strong, but finished strong as well.